That cheap plastic stick sat on the table like a prison sentence. My sister rubbed her belly, grinning like she had just won the lottery. But I knew who would be paying the price. I just stared at her and decided that if she saw me as a wallet with legs, I would become one she could never open again. The collapse of my entire family started with a single bank notification at 2:13 in the morning. My name is Ivy Simmons. I am 28 years old, a shift lead at Cedar Line Freight Works, and I live in a house in Colorado Springs that usually sounds less like a home and more like a riot in a daycare center. I spend my days managing logistics for interstate trucking and my nights managing the chaos of a family that refuses to grow up. The air in our living room was thick enough to choke on, smelling of stale popcorn and Trent's body spray. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of night where I just wanted to take my boots off and stare at a blank wall. But my sister, Kayla, had decided it was showtime. She stood in the center of the rug, holding up a plastic stick like she was Lady Liberty holding the torch. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide and manic with a joy that looked disturbingly like a challenge. "Number 6, Kayla announced, her voice pitching up into a squeal that made the dog bark. "Baby number 6 is coming." The room went dead silent for a second, except for the television blaring a football game. I looked around at the 5 children already occupying every square inch of our space. Noah was trying to glue a Lego brick to the cat. Lily and Grace were fighting over a tablet with a cracked screen. The twins were asleep in a pile of laundry on the recliner. 5 kids, 5 mouths that I fed, 5 sets of school fees I paid. 5 futures that somehow rested on my shoulders because their parents treated biology like a hobby. I did not smile. I did not cry tears of joy. I did not rush to hug her. My first reflex was a cold, hard calculation. I looked at that plastic stick and my brain immediately pulled up the mental spreadsheet of my bank account. I subtracted the cost of prenatal vitamins, the copays for the doctor visits Kayla would inevitably make me drive her to, the diapers, the formula, and the sheer cost of expanding a grocery bill that was already drowning me. Trent, Kayla's boyfriend and the father of the last 3, did not even sit up. He was sprawled on the sofa, nursing a beer, his eyes still glued to the replay on the screen. He let out a short, dry laugh, the sound of a man who has never worried about a utility bill in his life. "Well, that is great, babe," Trent said, scratching his stomach. He glanced at me, a smirk playing on his lips. "Don't stress about the details. Ivy will figure it out. She always does, right?" Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap, like a breaking bone. It was quiet, like a wire finally pulling taut and pinging apart. I had spent 10 years being the safety net, the backup plan, and the wallet. I had put my own life on hold so many times, I forgot what it looked like to move forward. I looked at Trent, then I looked at Kayla, who was waiting for my congratulations. "No," I said. The word hung in the air, heavier than the silence before it. Kayla's smile faltered. "What do you mean, no?" she asked, her voice dipping into that dangerous territory where she played the victim. "I mean no," I said, my voice steady, though my hands were clenched into fists at my sides. "I am not doing this again. I am not raising another one. I am stopping here. If you want this baby, you and Trent figure out how to pay for it. You figure out who wakes up at 3 in the morning. You figure out how to feed 6 kids on a part-time salary." Kayla's face transformed in a single second. The glowing, expectant mother vanished, replaced by the woman who knew exactly how to twist a knife. Her eyes narrowed, and her lips curled back. "Excuse me?" she screamed, stepping toward me. "This is a blessing. How dare you? You think because you pay a few bills you own us? You are jealous. You are a bitter, jealous spinster who hates that I have a family and you have nothing." "I have nothing because I give everything to you," I shot back. "If you are going to be like that, then get out," Kayla shrieked, waving the pregnancy test at me like a weapon. "Get out of my house. I do not want your negativity around my baby. We do not need you." It was laughable, It was legally my name on the lease, my credit score keeping the lights on, but logic never worked on Kayla. She wielded emotion like a blunt object. Before I could respond, the landline on the kitchen wall rang. It was late. Only one person called the landline this late. I watched Kayla snatch it up, sobbing instantly into the receiver before she even said hello. She wailed about how cruel I was, how I wanted her baby to starve, how I was attacking her in her moment of joy. She listened for a moment, then thrust the phone at me with a triumphant sneer. "Nana wants to talk to you," she said. I took the phone. I knew what was coming. Nana Darlene lived 2 towns over, but her influence was a suffocating blanket over this house. "Ivy," Nana's voice came through, cold as steel and sharp as a razor. "Your sister is in a delicate condition. Stress is poison to the baby. I raised you better than this. Family does not abandon family when things get hard. You apologize to her, and you step up. That is what we do. Nana, I cannot afford—" "You figure it out." Nana cut me off. "You are the strong one. Stop being selfish. Do not make me come down there." The line went dead. I handed the phone back to Kayla, who was now smirking. Her tears miraculously dried. Trent had turned the volume up on the television. Completely unbothered, I did not scream. I did not throw a vase. I turned around, walked down the hallway, went into my bedroom, and locked the door. I sank onto the floor, my back against the wood, and I started to shake. I was not shaking from fear. I was shaking from a terrifying clarity. I realized that if I did not leave, if I did not escape this cycle, I was going to die here. I would wither away, paycheck by paycheck, until there was nothing left of Ivy Simmons but a husk used to fuel their fire. I needed out, but I needed a plan. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, wiping a stray tear from my cheek with the back of my hand. I expected a text from Nana, or maybe a guilt-trip message from our aunt. It was a notification from my bank. I frowned. It was 2:13 in the morning. No automatic payments were scheduled for tonight. I unlocked the screen and opened the app. My breath hitched in my throat. I stared at the numbers, blinking to make sure I was seeing them right. It was not a deposit. It was a withdrawal, a massive one. And the merchant name was something I had never seen before. I felt a cold drop of dread slide down my spine, far colder than the fear of a new baby. I thought the pregnancy was the trap. I was wrong. The trap had already snapped shut days ago, and I was only just now feeling the teeth. 4:45 in the morning is not a time of day people are meant to see. It is a dark, hollow hour where the silence rings in your ears, reminding you that while the world sleeps, you are already behind schedule. My alarm did not even get the chance to ring. My internal clock, honed by a decade of anxiety and responsibility, jolted me awake 3 minutes before the buzzer set on my phone. I rolled out of bed, my feet hitting the cold laminate floor, and for a second, I just sat there in the dark, breathing in the smell of the old house. It smelled of mildew, stale frying oil, and the lingering scent of too many people in too small a space. I moved through the hallway like a ghost. The door to the master bedroom, where Kayla and Trent slept, was shut tight. I could hear the faint, rhythmic rumble of Trent snoring through the wood. They were hibernating, resting up for another day of doing absolutely nothing, while I started my second shift before my first one even began. The kitchen was a war zone from the night before. I cleared a small space on the counter to start the assembly line. 5 lunchboxes, 5 sets of dietary needs, and picky preferences that I accommodated because it was easier than listening to them cry. I spread peanut butter on bread that was going stale, slicing apples I had bought on clearance, and rationing out the last of the pretzels. I checked the fridge for milk. There was barely a cup left in the gallon jug. I added milk to the mental list that was permanently etched into my frontal lobe. By 6 o'clock, the sun was threatening to rise, and the house began to stir. Noah, the 11-year-old, stumbled into the kitchen, his hair a bird's nest. He shoved a crumpled worksheet at me before I had even poured my coffee. "I need help with math," he mumbled, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "I forgot to do it." I looked at the paper. Fractions. I hated fractions. I sat him down at the sticky table, explaining numerators and denominators while simultaneously braiding Lily's hair. She was 8 and tender-headed, wincing every time I pulled the brush through a knot. "Hold still, Lily," I whispered, my eyes darting between her pigtails and Noah's scribbles. "If you move, it is going to hurt more." "Where is Mom?" Lily asked, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Sleeping," I said. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I looked over at the sink. Grace, the 14-year-old, was standing there on a stool, her hands submerged in soapy water. She was washing the mountain of dishes from last night's dinner, the dinner I had cooked, and the dishes Trent had left because he was too tired from watching television. "Grace, stop," I said, my voice softer. "I will do those. Go get your backpack." "It is okay, Aunt Ivy," she said without turning around. Her shoulders looked too small, too slumped for a girl who should be worrying about high school crushes, not dishpan hands. "If I do not do them, Mom will yell at you for the kitchen being dirty." That broke me a little. Just a hairline fracture in the armor I wore every day. I walked over, dried her hands with a towel, and gently pushed her toward the door. "Go. I mean it." Once they were on the bus, I reached for the envelope in the cabinet where we kept the household cash. I needed $20 for Noah's field trip and money for milk. I lifted the ceramic jar. It felt light, too light. I poured it out. Pennies, a few dimes, a button. The $200 I had put in there on Friday was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty counter, panic rising in my throat like bile. Then I saw it, crumpled in the trash can near the fridge. A glossy brochure for a studio downtown, the Goddess Glow maternity package. The price circled in red marker was $350. She had taken the grocery money. She had taken the field trip money. She had raided the jar to put a deposit on a photo shoot for a baby that was currently the size of a lentil. While her living children ate stale bread, I did not have time to scream. I had to go to work. My shift at Cedar Line Freight Works was usually my escape. The warehouse was loud, industrial, and logical. Boxes went from point A to point B. If they did not, there was a reason, and there was a solution. But today, the chaos of home followed me. Around 10:30, right in the middle of a logistics meeting with the regional manager. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Then a third time. I glanced down, expecting an emergency. It was an email notification. Urgent. Auto insurance cancellation notice. Payment declined. I froze. I excused myself. Stepping out into the cool concrete corridor, I dialed the automated number. Policy canceled due to non-payment. My blood ran cold. I had given Kayla the cash for the bill 2 weeks ago. I remembered the moment distinctly. I had handed her 3 crisp $100 bills. She had tucked them into her bra, smiled, and promised to stop at the payment center on her way to get her nails done. She had stolen it. She had stolen the insurance money. If I had been pulled over this morning, I would have lost my license. I would have lost my job. Before I could process the betrayal, the phone rang again, a local number. "Hello? Is this Ivy Simmons?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. This is the secretary at Pinewood Elementary. We have Noah here in the office. He needs a signature for the permission slip, or he has to sit in the library during the assembly." "Did you call his mother?" I asked, pinching the bridge of my nose. "We tried Mrs. Simmons 3 times, the secretary said, her voice tight with judgment. "And his father?" No answer. "The emergency contact list says you are the primary for decision-making if parents are unavailable." Unavailable. They were sleeping. It was 11 in the morning on a Wednesday, and they were sleeping while I fielded calls from my warehouse floor. "I will fax the signature," I said. "Please do not punish him for this." I drove home that evening in a silence that felt heavy, like the air before a tornado. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I was exhausted. My feet throbbed in my work boots. My eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets and suppressing tears. When I walked through the front door, the smell hit me first. barbecue sauce and onions. Trent was sprawled on the couch, surrounded by takeout containers. The television was blaring. Toys were scattered across the floor like shrapnel. Legos, dolls, dirty socks. Trent looked up, wiping grease from his chin. "Hey, Ivy, you are late." "I had to stop for gas," I said, stepping over a pile of laundry that had been there since Monday. "We are starving," Trent said, pointing to the empty containers. "I ordered wings, but they messed up the order. Do we have any brisket? I am craving steak or brisket. Something red meat, you know?" I stared at him. I looked at the man who had contributed nothing to this household but DNA and carbon dioxide. "We do not have brisket, Trent," I said, my voice flat. "We do not have milk." The bedroom door opened, and Kayla emerged. She was wearing a silk robe I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. She rubbed her stomach, looking around the living room with a grimace. "God, Ivy," she sighed, kicking a toy car out of her path. "The house is a disaster. How am I supposed to relax in this environment? Stress is bad for the baby. You know, Nana said I need a calm atmosphere." She looked at the sink, which was full again because nobody had lifted a finger since I left. "And look at those dishes," she added, shaking her head. "It smells like garbage in here." I stood in the middle of the room, still wearing my high-visibility vest. I looked at the sink. I looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 6:15. I looked down at my hands. The skin around my fingernails was cracked and bleeding from the dry warehouse air and the cheap dish soap we used. My palms were rough. My wrists ached. For the first time in my life, the question did not whisper in the back of my mind. It screamed, "Am I living? Or am I just the fuel they burn to keep themselves warm?" I was not a sister. I was not an aunt. I was an indentured servant to their incompetence. I was paying for a life I did not choose, funding a family that treated me like an appliance, useful until I stopped working, and then easily kicked when I stalled. "I am going to my room," I said. "But what about dinner?" Trent asked. I did not answer. I walked into my room and shut the door. I did not lock it this time. I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled out my phone. I needed to see the damage. I needed to see how much of a hole the insurance lapse was going to put in my savings. I opened the banking app. My eyes scanned the transaction history. I saw the grocery charge I made yesterday. I saw the gas station charge. And then I saw it. Pending. Approved. It was a transaction time-stamped for 2 hours ago. A charge for $4,000. It was not a withdrawal. It was a credit inquiry that had triggered a massive purchase on a line of credit I did not know I had. A credit card had been opened in my name, and someone had just maxed it out in a single afternoon. I looked at the merchant name, Little Angels Deluxe Nursery Furniture. The air left the room. It wasn't just the cash in the jar. They weren't just stealing my present. They were eating my future. The living room had been rearranged. That was the first thing I noticed when I walked out of my bedroom, hoping to sneak a glass of water before the inevitable evening chaos resumed. The furniture had been shifted to create a semicircle facing a single, wooden chair in the center of the rug. It looked less like a family gathering and more like a tribunal. Nana Darlene was sitting in the recliner, her back stiff, her silver hair sprayed into a helmet of perfection that defied gravity. Next to her sat Aunt Marlene, a woman whose primary contribution to the family was spreading gossip disguised as prayer requests. Marlene held a notepad, her lips pursed in a line so thin it was almost invisible. They looked like a panel of judges waiting for the defendant to arrive. Kayla sat on the sofa, flanked by Trent. She had a blanket draped over her legs and was rubbing her stomach with a rhythmic, performative slowness. Her eyes were red-rimmed, though whether from genuine tears or allergies, I could not tell. "Sit down, Ivy," Nana said. It was not a request. I froze in the doorway. The air in the room was heavy, smelling of Marlene's overpowering lavender perfume and the lingering scent of Trent's earlier takeout. "I am just getting water," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Sit down," Nana repeated, enunciating each word like she was speaking to a disobedient dog. I walked to the wooden chair and sat. My hands were trembling slightly, so I clasped them in my lap to hide the weakness. I looked at the faces staring back at me. There was no warmth here. There was only calculation. "We need to discuss your attitude," Aunt Marlene began, clicking her pen. "Kayla has been telling us some very disturbing things." Kayla let out a choked sob, leaning her head onto Trent's shoulder. "She hates us. Aunt Marlene. She looks at me like she wants something bad to happen. She told me she would not help with the baby. She said she was done." "I said I could not afford another child," I corrected, my voice tight. "There is a difference." "Semantics," Nana snapped, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. "The point is, Ivy, you have lost your way. You have become selfish. You live under this roof. You eat the food this family provides." "I buy the food?" I interrupted. Nana's eyes narrowed. "Do not interrupt me. You are part of a unit. When one part of the unit fails, the whole structure suffers. Kayla is pregnant. She is bringing life into this world. And what are you doing? Hoarding your resources like a dragon sitting on gold." "I have no gold, Nana," I said. "I have a paycheck that is gone before it even hits my account." "We have a solution," Nana said, ignoring my defense. She leaned forward, her gaze locking onto mine. "We have been looking at the logistics. With the new baby, the current vehicle situation is untenable. Kayla cannot be squeezing 4 kids into the back of a sedan. It is unsafe, and frankly, it is undignified." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. So, Nana continued. "Marlene knows a dealer who has a gently used 7-seater van. It is perfect, low mileage, safe." "That sounds nice for Kayla," I said, warily. "It is," Nana smiled, a thin, predatory expression. "But we need a down payment, and since you are the one with the credit and the asset, we decided the best course of action is for you to sell your Honda Civic. It will cover the down payment and the first few months of insurance." The room spun. My Civic. It was 10 years old, scratched on the bumper, and had 120,000 miles on it. But it was mine. It was the only thing I owned outright. It was how I got to the warehouse at 4 in the morning. It was how I got to my night classes at Frontier Tech College. "No," I said. "Excuse me?" Aunt Marlene asked, pen hovering over her paper. "No," I repeated, louder this time. "I need my car. I have work. I have school." Trent let out a snort of laughter. He picked at a callus on his thumb, not even looking at me. "School," he scoffed. "Why are you even bothering with that? You are 28. Ivy, you are not going to be some big-shot executive. Women worry about the home. That is where the work is. You are wasting gas driving to that college just to read books you could get at the library." "I am getting a degree in supply chain management," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "I am trying to build a future." "Your future is family," Nana stated, slamming her hand on the armrest. "And right now, your family needs a van. You can take the bus." "The bus does not run at 4 in the morning. "Nana," I shouted, standing up, "if I sell my car, I lose my job. If I lose my job, nobody pays the mortgage." "We will figure that out," Kayla whimpered. "You just do not want me to be happy. You want me to struggle." "Sit down," Nana commanded. I did not sit. I backed away toward the hallway. "We are not done," Nana said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, low register. "If you are going to be stubborn about the car, then there is another way you can prove your loyalty. The van needs financing. Marlene has the paperwork here. We need a co-signer, a family loan. It consolidates some of the household debt and covers the van." "Consolidates debt?" I looked at Trent. "You mean his gambling debt? Or the credit cards Kayla maxed out?" "It is a family loan," Nana emphasized. "You will sign as the primary guarantor. It shows the bank we are serious." "I am not signing anything," I said. "I am not taking on $50,000 of debt for a van I cannot drive and debts I did not create." Kayla stood up then. The tears vanished instantly. She walked over to me, stopping just inches from my face. She smelled of sweetness and rot. She leaned in, her voice a whisper that only I could hear. "If you do not sign," she hissed, "you do not live here anymore. Nana owns the deed. Ivy, you just pay the bills. You sign, or I will have your bags on the curb by sunrise, and I will tell every person in this town that you pushed a pregnant woman." I stared at her. I looked at the sister I had protected on the playground. I looked at the woman whose children I raised, and I realized there was nothing left of her to save. "I need to think," I said, my voice hollow. "You have until morning," Nana declared from her throne. "Do the right thing, Ivy. Do not make us the enemy." I turned and walked away. I felt their eyes on my back, heavy physically, like hands wrapping around my throat, squeezing just to see how much air they could cut off before I passed out. I went into my room and locked the door. I shoved a chair under the handle. I was trapped. If I lost the car, I lost my job. If I signed the loan, I lost my financial freedom forever. They were not asking for help. They were asking for a sacrifice. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened my laptop. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type the password. I needed to see exactly how deep the water was before they tried to drown me. I did not go to the bank app this time. I went deeper. I logged into the National Credit Monitoring System. The page loaded slowly, the spinning wheel mocking my racing heart. When the dashboard appeared, my breath stopped. It was not just the nursery furniture. My credit score had dropped 150 points in 3 months. There were inquiries, hard inquiries. One for a car loan at a dealership I had never visited, one for a personal loan of $10,000, and a new credit card opened under the name Ivy J. Simmons, but with a billing address that belonged to Nana Darlene. They had not just planned this tonight. The council in the living room was just theater. They had already started eating me alive weeks ago. The screen of my laptop glowed with a sickening blue light, illuminating the disaster of my financial life. I clicked on the details of the most recent account, the one opened just 3 days ago. It was a store credit card for a high-end baby boutique, the kind of place where a single pacifier cost more than my hourly wage. The credit limit was $5,000. The current balance was $4,892. They had not just bought a crib. I scrolled through the itemized list, my stomach churning. They had purchased the Royal Heirloom Nursery Package. It included a hand-carved oak crib, a matching changing table, a velvet rocking chair, and a stroller system that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. $4,000 of debt, stamped with my name, for a baby that had not even been born yet. I needed physical proof. Digital numbers were one thing, but I needed something I could hold. I quietly moved the chair from under my door handle and crept out into the hallway. The house was silent now. The tribunal had dispersed. Nana and Marlene had left, likely satisfied that they had terrified me into submission. Kayla and Trent were in their room. I could hear the murmur of the television. I went to the kitchen. The trash can was overflowing, a testament to the laziness that ruled this house. I pulled out the bag, ignoring the smell of sour milk and old meat. I dug through the layers of refuse, pizza boxes, soda cans, and then, near the bottom, wadded up inside a paper towel. I found it. It was a printed email confirmation. Kayla must have printed it out to show Nana, or maybe just to gloat over her new acquisitions before tossing it. I smoothed out the coffee-stained paper. The billing address was my name, Ivy Simmons. The shipping address was this house, but the email address associated with the order was kaylamommy6@email.com. She had not even tried to hide it. She was so confident in her ownership of me that she used her own email to commit fraud in my name. I went back to my room, locked the door again, and dialed Mia Calder. Mia and I had been friends since high school. She worked as a fraud investigator for a credit union in Denver. It was late, almost midnight, but she picked up on the second ring. "Ivy?" she said, her voice groggy. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. my voice shaking. Mia, I think my sister opened a credit card in my name. What? Mia was instantly awake. The professional switch flipped. Tell me exactly what you see. I read her the account details, the hard inquiry date, and the items purchased. I told her about the receipt in the trash. There was a long silence on the other end. Ivy, Mia said. Her tone dropped dead serious. That is not borrowing. That is identity theft. It is federal. It is a crime. She is my sister, I whispered, the old guilt rearing its head. She is a thief, Mia corrected. Listen to me carefully. You need to lock everything down, right now. Go to the 3 credit bureaus and freeze your credit reports. Do not just put a fraud alert, freeze them. It stops anyone, including you, from opening new accounts. I did it while she stayed on the line, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Click, click, click. Now, Mia said. Look for anything else. If she opened one card, she probably tried for more. I went back to the inquiry list. My eyes scanned the dates. 2 days ago, there was another hard pull. This one was from Premier Auto Finance. The air left my lungs. Mia, I said, there is an inquiry for a car loan from 2 days ago. Did you apply for a car? No. Then she tried to buy a car in your name, Mia said. Was she approved? It says pending additional verification. Everything clicked into place. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together with a terrifying clarity. Nana's visit tonight, the demand for me to sell my Civic, the pressure to co-sign for the van. They had already applied for the loan in my name 2 days ago. They likely got flagged because the bank needed a wet signature or ID verification they could not fake online. That was why they staged the intervention. They needed me to unknowingly legitimize the fraud they had already attempted. This was not a messy family desperate for help. This was a coordinated financial extraction. They were harvesting my identity like a crop. She tried to buy a van, I realized aloud. She tried to buy a $40,000 van in my name, got stuck, and then tried to bully me into signing the paperwork to push it through. Ivy, Mia said, you have to dispute these charges. You have to file a police report. I cannot call the police on my pregnant sister, I said. The conditioning of 20 years fighting against the logic. Then you are agreeing to pay the debt, Mia said simply. If you do not report it as fraud, the law assumes you authorized it. You have 2 choices. You send her to court, or you pay for that velvet rocking chair for the next 5 years. Save every text. Save every email. Do not delete anything. I hung up the phone. A cold rage replaced the fear. I was done being the victim. I walked out of my room. I marched straight to the master bedroom and pounded on the door. Ivy? Trent's voice came from inside. It is midnight. Quit banging. I opened the door. They were in bed, the blue light of the television flickering over them. Kayla looked up, annoyed. I know about the credit card, I said. The room went silent. Kayla did not gasp. She did not look ashamed. She just adjusted her pillow. What are you snooping around for? She asked. Her voice bored. You opened a store card in my name, I said, holding up the crumpled receipt. You spent $4,000 on nursery furniture, and you tried to take out a car loan. Kayla rolled her eyes. So? We need the stuff. Ivy, you have good credit. You were not using it. What is the big deal? I will pay the minimums when Trent gets his bonus. Trent does not get bonuses, I said. He works part-time at a sporting goods store. Hey, Trent said, sitting up. Watch your mouth. This is fraud. Kayla, I said, stepping into the room. You stole my identity. You committed a crime. Kayla laughed. It was a dry, cruel sound. Oh, stop being so dramatic. You live in this house. You eat here. You use the water. Consider it your contribution. You should be happy to help your nephews and nieces have nice things instead of being a miser. I pay the mortgage, I said, my voice rising. I pay the electric. I pay for the food. And now you steal $4,000 from me? You are family, Kayla shouted back, finally looking angry. You do not call the cops on family. You do not talk about fraud with your sister. You just handle it. Yeah, Trent added, lying back down. Go ahead and call the cops. See if they care. Domestic dispute between sisters? They will laugh you off the porch. Do not make a scene. Ivy, go to bed. They were so sure. They were so absolutely certain that I was too weak, too bound by blood and Nana's guilt trips to ever actually fight back. They thought the law did not apply in this house because they made the rules here. I turned around and walked out. I did not scream. I did not threaten. I went back to the living room. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mia. I ran a quick trace on the device ID used for the credit card application. It was an unencrypted connection. I cannot use this officially, but just so you know, it was an iPad, model A2300. I looked at the coffee table in the living room. Sitting there, plugged into the wall charger, was Kayla's white tablet. The screen lit up with a notification from a social media app. I walked over and picked it up. I turned it over. The model number was etched on the back in tiny gray letters, a 2300. It was the smoking gun. It was the murder weapon, and it was sitting right there on the sofa, covered in sticky fingerprints. They had not just stolen my money. They had done it while sitting 10 feet away from me, probably watching television, laughing while they ruined my life. I looked at the tablet, and then I looked at the front door. The lock clicked in my mind. I was not just leaving, I was going to war. The envelope was thick, the kind of heavy cream-colored stationery that promised good news before you even broke the seal. I stood by the kitchen island, the afternoon sun filtering through the grime on the window, and for the first time in years, the dust motes dancing in the light did not look like decay. They looked like potential. I opened the letter with trembling fingers. It was from Blue Aster Systems, a tech firm in Denver. I had interviewed there 3 weeks ago. A long-shot application for a paid internship in their systems analysis department. I scanned the text, my heart hammering against my ribs. We are pleased to offer you. I stopped breathing. The starting salary was $62,000 a year. It was double what I made at the warehouse. It was enough to rent a studio apartment in the city. It was enough to buy a used car that did not smell like wet dog. It was enough to disappear. A smile broke across my face. It was not the polite, customer service smile I wore at work, nor the tight, apologetic grimace I wore around Nana. It was a real, unguarded smile. It felt foreign, stretching muscles I had forgotten I owned. What are you grinning at? The voice sliced through my moment like a guillotine. Kayla waddled into the kitchen, one hand on her lower back, the other clutching a half-empty bag of chips. Her eyes narrowed instantly. She had a predator's instinct for joy. Whenever she sensed it in someone else, she felt an immediate compulsion to kill it. Nothing, I said, instinctively trying to fold the letter. Do not lie to me, she snapped, snatching the paper from my hand before I could pull it away. Let me see. She read it. I watched her eyes dart back and forth across the page. I saw the exact moment she registered the salary, and then the location. Her face did not soften with pride for her sister. It hardened into a mask of pure, selfish panic. Denver? She spat. You applied for a job in Denver? It is a career. Kayla, I said, my voice quiet but firm. It is my way out of the warehouse. It is an hour away, she shouted. How are you going to pick up Noah from school if you are in Denver? How are you going to drive me to my ultrasounds if you are working downtown? I am not, I said. That is the point. Kayla stared at me, her face turning a mottled red. She looked at the letter, then at me, and then back at the letter. With a sudden, violent motion, she ripped the paper in half. Then she ripped those halves again, and again, until the offer letter was nothing but white confetti raining down onto the dirty linoleum floor. There, she said, breathing hard. Now you are not going anywhere. She stepped over the pieces, getting right in my face. You are going to quit that warehouse job. And you are certainly not taking this one. You are going to drop those stupid night classes, too. I need help. Ivy, I am high risk this time. I need bed rest. You are going to stay home and watch the kids like a dutiful sister. Or so help me God. I will make your life a living hell. I looked down at the shredded paper. A week ago. I would have cried. A week ago. I would have fallen to my knees and tried to tape it back together, begging her to understand. But today, I just stared at the debris. You tore a piece of paper. Kayla, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. You did not tear the offer. It is gone, she screamed, kicking a piece of the paper under the fridge. Forget about it. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her shouting at the walls. I went to my room and texted Mia immediately. She ripped up the letter. Is the offer still valid? Mia replied. 3 seconds later. It is 2026. Ivy, the offer is in the cloud. It is in your email. It is on their server. She can shred the paper, but she cannot shred the data. You are still hired. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. The job was safe. The exit door was still open. Later that evening, around 7 o'clock, I went out to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. I usually checked the mail to hide the bills before Kayla could see them and throw them away. But tonight I was looking for something else. Maybe a welcome packet from Blue Aster, or confirmation of my credit freeze. There was a thin, nondescript envelope from the El Paso County Assessor's Office. It was addressed to Darlene Simmons and Ivy J. Simmons, I frowned. Nana's name was on the deed to the house. She had inherited it from our grandfather. My name should not be on anything related to the property tax. I was just the occupant who paid the bills. I tore open the envelope. It was a notice of value, the standard assessment sent out for property taxes, but it listed the owners of record. Owner 1, Darlene Simmons. Owner 2, Ivy J. Simmons. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I leaned against the mailbox, the cold metal pressing into my back. Why was I listed as an owner? I ran back inside, dodging the chaos of the living room, and locked myself in my bedroom. I opened my laptop and navigated to the county clerk's public records website. I typed in our address, the search results loaded, and my blood turned to ice. There was a document recorded 14 months ago, a quitclaim deed, followed immediately by a refinance mortgage deed. I clicked on the PDF. I saw my signature. It was shaky, looking exactly like it did when I was exhausted. I remembered that day. It was a Sunday. Nana had come over with a stack of papers. She had told me she was refinancing the house to get a lower interest rate so she could help Kayla with the kids. She said the bank required a resident witness and a co-occupant agreement to prove I lived there so she could get the homestead exemption. Just sign here, honey, she had said, patting my hand. It just says you live here. It helps Nana save $200 a month. I had just finished a double shift. I had been awake for 20 hours. I trusted her. I trusted my grandmother. I read the document on the screen now, fully awake. I had not signed a residency affidavit. I had signed a deed transfer where Nana added me to the title, and then immediately used my credit history and my income to qualify for a $300,000 mortgage on a house that was barely worth $250,000. They had cashed out the equity. Nana had pulled $50,000 of equity out of the house using my credit score to secure the loan. Because her credit was ruined, and because my name was on the deed and the mortgage note, I was not just a tenant, I was 100% liable for the debt. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. The room felt like it was shrinking. The job in Denver, the salary, the escape plan. If I left, if I stopped paying the mortgage, they would default. And because I was a co-owner, the foreclosure would go on my record. It would destroy my credit for 7 years. I would not be able to rent an apartment in Denver. I would not be able to buy a car. Kayla's threat earlier suddenly made sense in a way that made me want to vomit. You are not going anywhere. She was not just being mean. She knew. They all knew. Nana had not just stolen my money. She had shackled me to this rotting house with a $300,000 chain. They had secured my loyalty by making sure that if the ship went down, I was legally obligated to drown with them. I looked at the owner field again. Ivy J. Simmons. They thought they had buried me. They thought this was the final nail in the coffin that would keep me serving them forever. But as I stared at the legal document, a different thought began to form in the back of my mind. It was a cold, dangerous thought. If my name is on the deed, then this is not Nana's house. It is my house, and that meant I had rights they had completely forgotten about. For the next 72 hours, I put on the greatest performance of my life. I did not scream. I did not throw the property tax assessment in Nana's face. I did not strangle Kayla when she asked me to rub her feet. Instead, I became a ghost. I moved through the house with a terrifying compliance, cooking the meals, washing the dishes, and nodding silently when Trent made jokes about my attitude adjustment. They thought they had broken me. They looked at my silence and saw submission. They did not know that silence is also the sound of a soldier loading a weapon. While I played the role of the beaten dog at home, I was dismantling their cage during my lunch breaks. On Tuesday, I drove to a bank on the other side of town, one that Nana did not use, and opened a new checking account. I set up my direct deposit to switch over immediately. The next paycheck, the one due in 4 days, would not land in the account Kayla had access to. It would land in a fortress she could not touch. On Wednesday, I rented a post office box at a strip mall 3 miles away. I changed every password I owned, email, social media, student loan portals, to a random string of characters I memorized and did not write down. I took my birth certificate, my social security card, the physical copy of the deed I had printed, and the few pieces of jewelry I had inherited from my other grandmother, and I drove them to Mia's house. "Keep these in your safe," I told her, handing over a waterproof document bag. "If anything happens to me, you give this to the police." Mia had looked at me with wide, frightened eyes, but she took the bag. By Thursday evening, I was back in the house, documenting everything. I used an old digital camera I found in a drawer, avoiding my phone in case they were tracking it. I took pictures of the unpaid utility bills piled on the counter. I took pictures of the empty fridge. I took screenshots of the abusive texts Kayla sent me when I was 5 minutes late coming home. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters after a dinner of spaghetti that nobody else had helped clean up, when the garage door creaked open. I froze. Trent usually smoked in the garage, but I could hear him shouting at the television in the living room. "Aunt Ivy?" It was a whisper. I turned to see Eli standing in the doorway that connected the kitchen to the garage. Eli was 17, the oldest of Kayla's brood. He was a quiet kid, tall and lanky, with hair that always fell over his eyes. He spent most of his time in his room or skateboarding, making himself invisible to avoid the crossfire of his mother's moods. He jerked his head toward the garage, his eyes darting toward the living room to make sure the coast was clear. I dried my hands and followed him. The garage was cold and smelled of gasoline and old cardboard. Eli didn't turn on the main light. He stood by the workbench, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his oversized hoodie. "What is it, Eli?" I asked softly. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw how tired he was. He had the same shadows under his eyes that I did. He was 17, but he carried the weight of a third parent. "You are leaving, aren't you?" he asked. It wasn't an accusation, it was a hope. "Eli, do not lie to me," he cut in, his voice cracking slightly. "I saw you packing the trash bags. I saw you take the papers to your car." My heart hammered. If Eli told Kayla, my window of opportunity would slam shut. But Eli did not yell for his mother. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 things, a small black USB drive and a spiral-bound notebook. He held them out to me. "Take them," he said. "What is this?" I asked, taking the items. "The notebook is dates and times," Eli said, looking at his sneakers. Every time Mom used your credit card, every time she logged into your computer when you were at work. I wrote it down. I did not know what to do with it, but I knew it was wrong. I opened the notebook. It was a ledger of betrayal. January 3rd. Mom ordered crib. January 5th. Mom called bank pretending to be Aunt Ivy. My throat tightened. Eli. And the USB, he continued, rushing the words out now. I recorded them. Last night, when you were in the shower. Recorded who? Mom and Nana, he said. They were talking on the porch. Listen to the last file. I pulled my phone out. Grateful I had an adapter in my pocket, and plugged the drive in. I found the file dated yesterday. I pressed play, keeping the volume low. The sound of crickets filled the garage, followed by the unmistakable scratching of a lighter. Then, Nana's voice cut through the static, clear and venomous. She is getting restless. Kayla, you need to tighten the leash. I am trying, Kayla's voice replied. But she got that job offer. She thinks she is special. If she tries to pack a bag, Nana said, her tone as cold as ice. You call the police immediately. You tell them she stole the Civic. You report it as a theft in progress. If she has an arrest record, she loses the job. If she loses the job, she has to stay here. Can we do that? The car is in her name. We tell them she was mentally unstable and took the family vehicle without permission. We make a scene. By the time the cops sort out the title, she will have missed her start date. We just need to break her momentum. We need her here to pay the mortgage until the baby comes. After that, who cares? I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped the phone. They were not just using me. They were actively plotting to criminalize me. They were willing to give me a police record, to ruin my reputation, just to keep their bill payer in the house for another 6 months. I looked up at Eli. He was crying, silent tears tracking through the grime on his cheeks. I am sorry, Aunt Ivy, he whispered. I should have told you sooner. I dropped the phone and the notebook on the workbench and pulled him into a hug. He was taller than me now, but he collapsed into my arms like a little boy. I held him tight, feeling his ribs through his hoodie. He was the only innocent thing in this house, the only one who had seen the monster and refused to become it. You have nothing to be sorry for, I told him fiercely, pulling back to look him in the eye. You just saved my life. They are going to do it, Eli said, wiping his face. Nana is coming over tomorrow morning to watch you. If you are going to go, you have to go now, before they wake up. I looked at the Honda Civic parked in the driveway. If I waited until the weekend, until I was ready, I would end up in the back of a squad car. I cannot leave you here, I said, a new panic rising. Eli, come with me. He shook his head slowly. I can't, not yet. I have to finish high school. And someone has to make sure the little ones eat. He looked toward the door where his younger siblings were sleeping. But if you get out, if you win, maybe you can come back for us? It was a question asked with the desperate hope of a prisoner watching a jailbreak. I grabbed his shoulders. I swear to you, Eli, I am going to burn their world down. And then I am coming to get you, you and the others. This is not forever. Just hold on. He nodded, swallowing hard. Go. I will disable the garage door opener so they can't hear you open it. I will watch the hallway. I looked at my watch. It was 11:45 at night. I had planned to leave on Saturday. I had planned to have a clean break. But plans were for people who were not being hunted. Okay, I said, grabbing the USB and the notebook. Tonight, the digital clock on my nightstand read 12:15 in the morning. The house settled into a heavy, rhythmic silence, broken only by the settling of the foundation and the occasional hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I was not packing a suitcase. A suitcase had wheels that rumbled on hardwood floors. A suitcase signaled a trip. A suitcase was loud. Instead, I held a roll of heavy-duty black trash bags. I opened one, flinching at the rustle of the plastic. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. I waited 10 seconds, listening for any break in Trent's snoring or the creak of a bed spring from the kids' room. Silence. I exhaled and began to pack. I did not pack my high school yearbook. I did not pack the snow globe Nana gave me when I was 10. I did not pack the framed photos of the children I had practically raised. Sentimental items were anchors, and I needed to float. I packed only what would keep me alive. My laptop went into the bottom of the bag. Cushioned by my winter coat, I shoved in 3 pairs of jeans, my work boots, and my entire underwear drawer. Then came the folder. The waterproof bag Mia had given me was already at her house, but I had the original deed I had printed from the county records, along with the notebook Eli had given me and the USB drive. I taped the envelope to my torso, right against my skin, under my shirt. If they stopped me, if they tried to physically drag me back, they would have to strip me to get the leverage they held over my head. At 12:30, a shadow detached itself from the wall in the hallway. It was Eli. He was barefoot, moving with the silent grace of a kid who had learned that visibility equaled liability. He stood by my door and raised one hand, giving me a thumbs up. The hallway was clear. I hoisted the black plastic bag over my shoulder. It looked like I was taking out the trash. If Kayla woke up and saw me, that is exactly what I would say. Just cleaning up. Go back to sleep. I stepped into the corridor. The floorboards under the carpet were treacherous. I knew every squeak and groan of this house like the back of my hand. I stepped over the loose board near the bathroom. I hugged the wall as I passed the master bedroom, through the gap under their door. I could see the flickering blue light of the television they never turned off. I heard Kayla shift in her sleep, a heavy, restless movement. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would wake them up. I stopped breathing. I became part of the wall. After a moment, Trent let out a long, rattling snort, and the rhythm of their sleep resumed. I looked at Eli. He was standing by the door to the garage, his face pale in the shadows. He had already unlocked the deadbolt. He had already disengaged the automatic garage door motor, so it would not grind and whir. I reached the kitchen. I had one last thing to do. I pulled a white envelope from my pocket and placed it in the center of the kitchen island, right on top of the pile of unpaid bills they expected me to handle. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 2 sentences written in thick black marker. From today, all communication must go through my lawyer. Do not use my name ever again. I did not say goodbye. I did not say I was sorry. I walked to the garage door. Eli opened it for me. The garage was freezing. My breath bloomed in the air as I walked to my Honda Civic. I did not open the driver's side door because the dome light would turn on. Instead, I opened the rear door, threw the trash bag into the back seat, and climbed through to the front, keeping my body low. I put the key in the ignition but did not turn it. I shifted the gear into neutral. Eli moved to the front bumper. I kept my door cracked open so I could steer and push with one leg. Together, in the icy darkness, we pushed. The tires crunched softly over the concrete floor, a sound like grinding teeth. We rolled the car backward, inch by agonizing inch, down the driveway. The slope of the driveway took over. The car gathered momentum. I waved at Eli, a frantic, silent salute. He stood in the open garage, a small, dark figure against the gloom. Watching me go, I let the car roll. I rolled past the neighbor's house. I rolled past the fire hydrant. I rolled until I was 3 houses down and around the corner, hidden by a large oak tree. Only then did I turn the key. The engine roared to life. To me, it sounded like a jet engine, loud enough to wake the dead. I slammed the car into drive and did not look in the rearview mirror. I did not turn on my headlights until I hit the main road. I drove. I drove past the grocery store where I bought their milk. I drove past the school where I signed their permission slips. I drove until the city limits of Colorado Springs were aglow in my rearview mirror, and the dark stretch of Interstate 25 opened up before me like a black ribbon leading to heaven. I made it to Denver at 2 a.m. I had booked a room at an extended stay motel near the tech center. It was not the Ritz. The carpet smelled of industrial cleaner and stale cigarettes. and the walls were so thin I could hear the person in the next room coughing. But it was mine. I locked the deadbolt. I engaged the chain. I wedged a chair under the knob. I checked the window lock. I sat on the bed, surrounded by my trash bags, and listened. I heard the hum of the heater. I heard a siren in the distance. I heard my own lungs filling with air that I did not have to share. I slept for 3 hours, a shallow, twitchy sleep, keeping one hand on my phone. When I woke up at 6, my phone screen was a wall of notifications. It had started at 5:30 in the morning, presumably when Trent woke up and realized there was no coffee and no Ivy to make it. First came the confusion. Where are you? We need milk. Are you at the store? Pick up donuts. Then, the discovery of the note. What is this joke? Get home now. Mom is crying. You are stressing her out. Then, the realization that the car was gone. Did you take the car? That is theft. Nana is calling the police. And finally, the rage. You ungrateful brat. After everything we did for you, you better answer me. I will come up there and drag you back. You are dead to us. I scrolled through the messages with the detachment of a coroner examining a body. I did not reply. I took screenshots of every single one. I saved them to the cloud. I saved them to a hard drive. I forwarded them to Mia. I took a shower. The water pressure weak, but the heat cleansing. I put on my best blouse, which I had carefully folded at the top of the trash bag to avoid wrinkles. I drove to the Blue Aster Systems headquarters. I walked into the HR department at 9 o'clock sharp. The office was glass and steel, quiet and efficient. It was a different planet from the chaos I had left behind. I am Ivy Simmons, I told the receptionist. I am the new systems analyst intern. I know my start date is next week, but I wanted to bring my documents and confirm my direct deposit information in person. I needed them to see me. I needed to establish a physical presence so that if a police officer called saying I was a missing person or a car thief, the company could say, "No, she was just here. She is fine." The HR manager was kind. She took my voided check from the new account and scanned my ID. "Welcome aboard, Ivy," she said. "We are excited to have you." I walked out of that building feeling lighter than I had in a decade. I drove back to the motel, picked up a sandwich on the way, and sat in my room, planning my next move. I needed a permanent apartment. I needed a lawyer. But I was free. I was actually free. I took a bite of my sandwich, savoring the silence. Then, there was a knock at the door. It was not the soft tap of housekeeping. It was a heavy, authoritative pound, 3 sharp raps, the kind of knock that demands entry, not permission. My heart stopped. I looked at the peephole, my blood running cold. I had been careful. I had not told anyone where I was. I had turned off my location services. I stood up, moving silently toward the door, and looked through the glass lens. 2 uniformed police officers stood in the hallway, and standing behind them, looking small and tearful and utterly triumphant, was Kayla. I opened the door slowly, keeping my hands visible and my face completely blank. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times during the drive to Denver, but seeing it in reality was a visceral shock. 2 police officers stood in the hallway, filling the narrow space with their bulk and their uniforms. They were not smiling. Behind them, peering around the shoulder of the taller officer, was Kayla. She looked devastating. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were swollen shut from crying, and she was clutching her stomach as if she were in physical pain. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. "Ma'am, are you Ivy Simmons?" the taller officer asked. His name tag read, Officer Miller. His hand was resting near his belt, not on his weapon, but ready. "Yes, I am," I said calmly. "We are here to conduct a welfare check," Miller said, his voice flat. "And we have received a complaint regarding the theft of significant family assets and potential child abandonment." "She took everything!" Kayla shrieked from the back, lunging forward slightly before the second officer, a woman named Officer Davis, put a hand out to steady her. She emptied the safe. She took the emergency cash. She took my grandmother's jewelry. And she left my babies without food. People in the other motel rooms were opening their doors. I could feel the weight of their eyes. "Officers," I said, stepping back and holding the door wide open. "Please come in. You can search the room." The officers exchanged a glance. They were expecting resistance. They were expecting a screaming match. Instead, I gave them open air. They walked into the cramped motel room. Kayla tried to follow, but Officer Davis held up a hand. "Stay in the hall." "Ma'am," Davis ordered. "But she has my money," Kayla sobbed. "I need to see." "Stay there," Davis repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. Miller looked around the room. He saw the black trash bags piled in the corner. He saw the single sandwich wrapper on the table. He saw the bed. Unmade and sad. There were no diamond necklaces. There were no stacks of cash. There was just the pathetic reality of a woman running for her life. "Where are the assets, Mrs. Simmons reported?" Miller asked, turning to me. "She claims you took $10,000 in cash and heirloom jewelry." I walked over to the table and picked up my phone. I unlocked it and opened the gallery. "I have $40 in my wallet," I said, "and this is the only thing I took." I handed the phone to Miller. On the screen was the screenshot of the text message Kayla had sent me 4 hours ago. "I will tell them you stole the jewelry if you do not come back right now. Nana said we can pin it on you." Miller read the text. His eyebrows went up. He swiped to the next image. It was the credit report showing the fraudulent account opened at the baby boutique. He swiped again. The threats from Nana. The time-stamped photos of the empty fridge at the house that I had supposedly abandoned. "She claims I abandoned the children," I said, my voice steady, though my knees felt like water. "But I am not their mother. I am the aunt. I have no legal guardianship. And here's the transfer receipt where I sent $500 to a separate account for their school lunches this morning, even after I left, to ensure they would not starve. Does that look like abandonment to you?" Officer Davis leaned over and looked at the screen. The hostility in her posture began to evaporate, replaced by the confusion of someone realizing they had been sent to arrest the wrong person. "She told us you were having a mental breakdown," Davis said softly. "She said you were dangerous." "I am dangerous to her bank account," I said, "because I stopped filling it." From the hallway, Kayla sensed the shift in the atmosphere. She realized the silence inside the room meant her narrative was failing. "Why aren't you arresting her?" Kayla yelled, trying to push past the doorframe. "She is a liar. She hates my children. She wants my baby to die. She pushed me. She pushed me before she left." It was a new lie, improvised in desperation. Officer Miller turned toward the door, his face darkening. Accusations of physical assault changed the game. "Did you touch her?" Miller asked me. "No," I said. "I slipped out while she was sleeping." "Liar!" Kayla screamed. "My back hurts. I need a doctor. She shoved me into the counter." Suddenly, there was a commotion in the hallway. I heard heavy breathing, the sound of running footsteps, and then a voice I never expected to hear in Denver. "She is lying!" We all turned. Eli was standing there, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his forehead. He was wearing his backpack and looked like he had run 5 miles. He must have taken the first bus up from Colorado Springs the moment he realized Kayla had found me. "Eli?" Kayla's face went white. "What are you doing here? Go home." "She is lying," Eli repeated, gasping for air. He pushed past his mother, ignoring her clawing hand, and walked straight up to Officer Davis. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. His hands were shaking, but his eyes were fierce. "She said Aunt Ivy stole the jewelry," Eli said. "But she didn't." He tapped the screen and held the phone up. The video played. It was grainy, shot from the crack of a door, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed Kayla standing in front of her bedroom mirror. She was holding a velvet jewelry box, Nana's box. She opened it, took out the gold necklace and the pearl earrings. Then, she walked over to her winter boots in the closet. She shoved the jewelry deep into the toe of the left boot. Then she stood back up, looked in the mirror, and practiced her face. She scrunched up her eyes, forced a few tears, and whimpered. "She took it all, officer. She took it all." The silence in the motel room was absolute. Officer Miller watched the video. Then he looked at Kayla. The look of professional courtesy was gone. It was replaced by the cold, hard stare of a law enforcement officer who realizes he is being used as a weapon in a domestic dispute. "That was recorded yesterday," Eli said, "before Aunt Ivy even left." Kayla stared at the phone. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. The grieving victim mask slipped, and something ugly and primal slithered out. She spun around and lunged at Eli. "You little traitor!" she shrieked, raising her hand to strike him. "I feed you! I put a roof over your head! How dare you!" Officer Davis moved faster than I thought possible. She caught Kayla's wrist in midair, twisting it down. "Ma'am, step back," Davis barked. "Do not touch him." "He is my son," Kayla spat, struggling against the officer's grip. "He is a liar like her." "We just watched you hide the evidence, Mrs. Simmons," Miller said, his voice dropping an octave. "Filing a false police report is a crime. Attempting to frame someone for grand larceny is a felony. Do you understand the situation you are in right now?" Kayla froze. The reality of the law finally pierced her delusion. She looked from the officer to me, and then to Eli. She realized her tears were not working. I was just confused," she stammered, pivoting instantly. "I misplaced them. Pregnancy brain. I thought she took them. It was an honest mistake." "And the rehearsing?" Miller asked, crossing his arms. "Was that pregnancy brain too?" Officer Davis, who had been quiet, suddenly tilted her head, looking at Kayla closely. She reached for her radio, then hesitated. She looked at her partner. "Miller," Davis said, keeping her eyes on Kayla. "The name? Kayla Simmons, Colorado Springs. Does that ring a bell from the briefing last month? The cybercrimes bulletin?" Miller frowned. Then his eyes widened. "The crowdfunding scam." Miller said. Kayla went pale. Not the fake pale of a victim, but the sickly gray pallor of a criminal caught in the spotlight. "I do not know what you are talking about," Kayla whispered, stepping back toward the hallway. "We had a bulletin about a woman in the Springs running multiple fake pregnancy donation pages," Davis said, stepping forward, forcing Kayla back into the room. "Soliciting funds for high-risk treatments for babies that did not exist, or for pregnancies that were exaggerated. The name on the complaints was Kayla Simmons." "That is not me," Kayla said, her voice trembling for real this time. "That is a common name." "We can check that very easily," Miller said, reaching for his handcuffs. "Since we are already here investigating a theft, I think we have probable cause to look a little deeper into your finances. Ma'am." The dynamic in the room flipped so violently it made my ears ring. 5 minutes ago, I was the fugitive. Now, I stood by my trash bags, watching the walls close in on the woman who had tried to bury me. Kayla looked at me. Her eyes were pleading now. "Ivy, tell them. Tell them I am just a mom. Tell them I wouldn't do that." I looked at her. I looked at the sister who had shredded my job offer. I looked at the woman who had tried to send me to jail so she could keep her servant. "Officers," I said clearly, "you should definitely look at her finances, and while you are at it, ask her about the credit cards opened in my name." Kayla slumped against the doorframe. Defeated, the performance was over. The curtain had fallen, and for the first time in her life, there was no one left to clap. The collapse of my sister's empire did not happen over years. It happened in 48 hours, and it sounded like the incessant pinging of a smartphone receiving rejection notifications. The moment the police left my motel room in Denver, the machinery of the real world began to grind Kayla down. Because I had frozen my credit and disputed the charges with Mia's help, the financial tap was not just turned off, it was cemented shut. The first domino fell at the grocery store. I received a gleeful text from Eli, who was sitting safe in the motel room with me while we figured out his next steps. He told me that his friend's mom had seen Kayla at the checkout line. She had a cart full of steaks, expensive organic snacks, and wine. When she swiped the card, the one with my name on it, the machine shrieked a decline. She tried again, declined. She tried the emergency card she kept in her wallet. Account closed due to fraud investigation. She had to leave the full cart and walk out of the store, red-faced, while the people she had spent years trying to impress watched her crumble. The second domino was Trent. Trent was a man who had an uncanny survival instinct, like a rat on a sinking ship. He did not care about the baby. He did not care about Kayla. He cared about comfort. When the police showed up at the house in Colorado Springs to follow up on the fraud investigation, a direct result of what happened in my motel room, Trent saw the writing on the wall. He realized the free ride was over. There would be no more brisket. There would be no more cable television paid for by Ivy. According to a neighbor who texted me, Trent packed his bags while Kayla was still screaming at the officers. He did not take his clothes. He took the PlayStation 5 I had bought for the kids last Christmas. He took the 60-inch television from the wall. And, most devastatingly, he found the emergency cash stash Kayla had hidden inside a hollowed-out Bible on her bookshelf, money she had likely skimmed from the grocery budget for years, and he took that too. He was gone before the sun set. He left no note. He just left a dust outline where the television used to be and a pregnant girlfriend facing felony charges. Then came the call I expected. My phone rang at 7 in the evening. It was Nana Darlene. I answered it on the second ring. I put it on speaker so Eli could hear, but I signaled for him to stay quiet. "Ivy," Nana said. Her voice was not apologetic. It was not warm. It was the tone of a CEO trying to negotiate a settlement with a troublesome employee. "This has gone far enough." "I agree," I said, looking out the window at the Denver skyline. "Your sister is hysterical," Nana continued. Ignoring my tone, "Trent has abandoned her. The police are asking invasive questions. You need to come home, Ivy. We can fix this. I have spoken to Pastor Miller, and he thinks if we all sit down as a family, we can work out a payment plan for the debts. We can tell the police it was a misunderstanding. You withdraw the fraud report, and we will forget you stole the car." I almost laughed. It was breathtaking. Even now, with the noose tightening, she thought she could order me back into the box. "I did not steal the car." "Nana," I said, "and I am not withdrawing the report." "You are destroying this family," Nana snapped, her composure cracking. "Over money? Over a few dollars? You are going to send your pregnant sister to jail?" "I am not sending her to jail," I said. "Her actions are, and you are not asking me to come home to be a sister. You are asking me to come home to be a wallet and a scapegoat. You want me to take the fall for the credit card so Kayla stays clean. You want me to pay the mortgage you took out in my name." There was a silence on the line, a heavy, guilty silence. "We did what we had to do to keep the house," Nana said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You come home, Ivy, or you are no granddaughter of mine." "I will resolve this, Nana," I said, my voice cold as steel. "But I will not do it by coming back to be your slave." I hung up. The next morning, I met with the lawyer Mia had recommended. His name was Mr. Henderson, a sharp-eyed man with a suit that cost more than my car. I laid everything out on his mahogany desk: the identity theft reports, the threats, the video Eli had taken, but the centerpiece was the house deed. Mr. Henderson studied the refinancing documents for a long time. He adjusted his glasses, reading the fine print where my signature sat, a signature I had provided under false pretenses. "This is constructive fraud, Mr. Henderson said, looking up, "and potentially elder abuse in reverse, or at least financial exploitation. They tricked you into signing a quitclaim to add you to the title, solely to use your creditworthiness to secure a loan they could not qualify for, and then concealed the nature of the debt from you. You are on the hook for $300,000, Ms. Simmons, but because they did this, You also have leverage." "What kind of leverage?" I asked. "You are a legal owner of the property," he said. "They cannot kick you out. But more importantly, we can petition the court to force a sale of the home to satisfy the debts and sever your financial ties. It is the nuclear option. It means they lose the house." "Do it," I said. "But I want to make sure the children are safe first." Kayla, realizing that I was not coming back to save her, played her final card. She went to the court of public opinion. She posted a long, tearful status on social media. She claimed I had suffered a mental break. She claimed I had drained the family accounts and run off to Denver with a secret boyfriend, leaving her and her children with no food and no electricity. She tagged every aunt, uncle, and cousin we had. My phone began to blow up with messages from relatives I had not seen in years. "How could you? Monster." Those poor kids. It hurt. It stung to see people I loved believing her lies. But I did not engage in a comment war. I did not scream into the void. I chose one person, Cousin Sarah. She was a nurse, sensible and neutral, who had always looked at Kayla with a bit of skepticism. I sent Sarah a private email. I attached the police report number. I attached the bank statements showing Kayla's spending at the boutique versus the zero balance in the kids' school lunch accounts. And I sent the video of Kayla hiding the jewelry. I added a simple note. "I know what she is saying. Here's the truth. Please check on the kids." 2 hours later, the angry messages from the family stopped. The silence was deafening. Sarah had clearly made some phone calls. The narrative had shifted. They were not looking at me as the villain anymore. They were looking at Kayla and asking questions she could not answer. But my victory felt hollow because I knew who was caught in the crossfire. I worked with Mr. Henderson to arrange a voluntary temporary guardianship. We reached out to Sarah. We presented it to Kayla not as a punishment, but as a lifeline. "You are under investigation. You are high risk. You have no money. Let the kids stay with Sarah and her husband for a month while you get healthy." If Kayla refused, we would hand the evidence of the fraud and the neglect to Child Protective Services, cornered, broke, and abandoned by Trent. Kayla signed the papers. She did it with a pen that shook in her hand, hating me with every stroke of ink. I drove with Sarah to pick up the younger kids. The house was dark. The power had been cut that morning. The smell of rotting food wafted from the kitchen. I waited in the car. I could not go in. I watched Lily and Noah walk out, carrying their backpacks, looking small and frightened. They saw me. I rolled down the window. "I did not leave you," I called out, my voice breaking. "I am fixing this. Go with Sarah. I will see you soon." Noah nodded, a solemn, adult understanding in his eyes. Kayla stood on the porch. She looked stripped. The arrogance was gone. The victimhood was gone. She looked at me, and for the first time, she saw something that terrified her more than poverty, more than jail, more than being alone. She saw that I did not care if she hated me. She had spent her whole life controlling me with the fear that I would be unloved, that I would be the bad sister. She realized, standing on that rotting porch, that the weapon was empty. I was willing to be the villain in her story if it meant I could be the hero in my own. I rolled up the window and drove away. The rearview mirror was clear. No heavy loads, no anchors, just the road ahead. The mediation room smelled of lemon polish and fear. It was a sterile conference room in downtown Denver, a neutral ground that felt miles away from the dirty living room where my life had been dismantled. On one side of the long mahogany table sat Nana Darlene and Kayla, looking small and huddled together. On my side sat Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, who arranged his papers with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an amputation. I did not look at them. I looked at the evidence spread out between us. It was not just a pile of papers. It was an autopsy of their betrayal. There were the credit card statements showing the $4,000 spent on luxury nursery furniture, while the school lunch account sat at zero. There were the transcripts of the threatening text messages. There was the affidavit from the fraud department confirming the identity theft, and, lying right in the center, was the USB drive containing the recording of Nana conspiring to frame me for grand larceny. Nana was the first to speak. She tried to summon her old authority, the matriarchal power that had kept me in line for 2 decades. "This is ridiculous," Nana said, smoothing her skirt. "We are family. We do not need lawyers, Ivy. Just sign the papers to drop the fraud charges, and we can go home. Kayla is stressed." "It is bad for the baby." Mr. Henderson did not even look up. He simply slid a single document across the table. It was the deed to the house. "Mrs. Simmons." "Mr. Henderson said, his voice calm and deep. "You are correct that family matters are complicated. However, property law is not. You coerced my client into signing a quitclaim deed to add her to the title of your home, solely for the purpose of using her credit score to secure a refinancing loan of $300,000. You then concealed the nature of that loan from her." Nana's mouth tightened. "It is a family home. She lives there." "She is a legal owner," Mr. Henderson corrected, "and as a legal owner who is currently being financially abused by the co-owners, Ivy is exercising her right to petition for a partition by sale. That means unless you can buy out her share of the equity and remove her name from the mortgage immediately, the court will order the house to be sold to satisfy the debt." The color drained from Nana's face. The house was her throne. It was the only thing she actually owned. She had thought adding my name was a trap for me, a way to chain me to the debt. She never realized she had handed me the keys to the castle. "You cannot sell my house," Nana whispered. "It is our house," I said, speaking for the first time. "And I am done paying for a roof that I am not allowed to sleep under safely." Kayla slammed her hand on the table. "You are a monster!" she shouted, tears springing to her eyes instantly. "I am pregnant. I am having my 6th child. You would throw a pregnant woman and 5 kids on the street? Where is your heart?" She looked at the mediator, a tired woman named Barbara, and pointed a trembling finger at me. "She hates my children. She wants them to suffer because she is jealous that she is alone." Mr. Henderson tapped the stack of bank statements. "Mrs. Simmons, can you explain why, if you were so concerned about the welfare of your children, you spent $4,800 on a crib and rocking chair using a fraudulent credit card, while your son Eli was forced to ask his aunt for money to buy lunch at school?" Kayla froze. I needed the nursery ready." "You needed a velvet rocking chair more than you needed to feed your existing children?" Mr. Henderson asked. "Because the forensic accounting shows that Ivy transferred $500 for food support after she fled your home in fear for her safety. That does not look like someone who hates children. That looks like someone who is protecting them from their mother." Kayla opened her mouth to argue, but the words died in her throat. She looked at the video file on the table. She knew what was on it. She knew that if we played that recording in a criminal court, she would not just lose the house, she would go to prison. The fight went out of them. It was like watching a balloon deflate. Nana Darlene slumped in her chair, realizing that her moral high ground had crumbled beneath the weight of legal documentation. There was no family loyalty card left to play against a felony fraud charge. The terms were harsh, and they were final. I agreed not to force the immediate sale of the house, provided that they assumed full liability for the mortgage and removed my name within 6 months. If they missed a single payment, the sale order would execute automatically. Kayla had to plead guilty to a lesser charge of misdemeanor fraud to clear my credit record, meaning she would have a permanent criminal record, and I was granted a permanent restraining order against both of them. I walked out of that room feeling lightheaded. It was over. The chains were cut. But Kayla could not let me go. She could not accept that the dynamic had shifted permanently. 3 days later, I was walking through the lobby of Blue Aster Systems. It was a beautiful space, all glass and polished stone, filled with professionals in suits. I was wearing my employee badge, holding a coffee, feeling like I finally belonged to myself. Then I heard the commotion near the security desk. "I need to see her. She is my sister." I stopped. My blood ran cold. Kayla had pushed past the security turnstiles. She looked frantic. Her hair was unwashed, and she was wearing a stained sweatshirt. She spotted me near the elevators and ran across the polished floor. Ignoring the security guards shouting after her, she threw herself at me. She did not attack me. She collapsed to her knees right in front of me, grabbing my hand with a grip that felt like a drowning woman. "Ivy, please," she wailed, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. Everyone in the lobby stopped to look. My colleagues, the receptionists, the clients. "You have to help me. Trent is gone. The lights are off again. Nana is just crying in her room. I do not have anyone. I am scared. Ivy, please come home." It was the ultimate manipulation. She was using her humiliation as a weapon, trying to shame me into submission by showing the world how broken she was without me. I looked down at her. I looked at the sister who had terrorized me, stolen from me, and tried to frame me. I felt a pang of pity, but it was distant, like watching a sad movie. It was not my pain anymore. I gently, but firmly, pulled my hand out of her grip. I stepped back. "Get up. Kayla," I said. My voice was not loud, but in the silent lobby, it carried. "I cannot do this alone," she sobbed, reaching for me again. "Who is going to help me with the baby? Who is going to raise them?" I looked her dead in the eye. "I have raised your children for years," I said. "I raised them when you were sleeping. I raised them when you were shopping. But I will not raise your choices anymore." "But they are your family," she cried. "They are," I said. "And that is why I have already set up the trust." She blinked, confused. "What?" "I am not giving you cash," I said, standing tall. "I never will again, but I have set up a direct payment system with the school. Their lunches are paid for. Their school supplies are paid for. And I have started an education fund for Eli and the others that you cannot touch. It is locked tight. Kayla, you will never see a cent of it. But they will have a future." I signaled to the security guards. They stepped forward, their faces grim but professional. "Please escort Mrs. Simmons out," I said. "She is trespassing," Kayla screamed as they lifted her up. She screamed my name. She screamed that I was cold, that I was cruel. But as the automatic doors slid shut behind her, cutting off her voice, the silence that followed was not empty. It was dignified. I turned back to the elevators. I pressed the button for the 12th floor. I did not look back. That night, I stood in my new apartment. It was small, just a studio with a view of a brick wall, but the lights were on. The refrigerator was full of food that I liked. Strawberries, sparkling water, expensive cheese. There was no screaming. There was no smell of stale diapers. I walked into the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me did not look like the exhausted, terrified ghost who had sneaked out of a garage at midnight with a trash bag. Her eyes were bright. Her skin was clear. She looked like someone who had walked through fire and come out made of gold. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Eli. "Thank you for the laptop. Aunt Ivy. I start my college applications tonight. I love you." I smiled. I put the phone down. I turned off the light and laid down in a bed that belonged only to me. Ivy Simmons had disappeared that night in the garage. The woman who woke up the next morning was someone else entirely. And for the first time in 28 years, I could not wait to meet her. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on whether you think I did the right thing. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Morgan Revenge Stories, like the video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people.